Hey time travelers, I spent a few weeks trying to get some fork of CUDA working so that I could train Flux LoRa's with it. But it broke the environment on 3 of my computers. We're talking about it in Discord and people are like, why don't you just try FluxGym? It was so much easier. And you know how I am. I do a lot of testing and I'm putting a lot of details into my videos. So I was doing this as well as other projects for a few months. And then I got to a couple of weeks ago and they're like, oh, CUDA has an update now. It actually trains Flux LoRa's. And I was like, I don't care because I use FluxGym. This is my look of disapproval. But there's still a few issues with FluxGym that I'll go over in this video. And I decided to do the summary part early in the video instead of at the end because I kind of, shit all over FluxGym in this video. And I want you guys to know that I actually prefer it for training a Flux LoRa. We'll just have to say that FluxGym has a lot of room for improvement. If you're in my Patreon and then you have access to the Tier 2 folder, go into Undocumented Solutions and Video Scripts, and then go to FluxGym. All the stuff I talk about in this video will have shortcuts for you guys where you can just run a script to do that thing. But I'm not gonna be like some people, like Frenchy Mumblefresh, who expects you to just pay him to have a solution to use someone else's Python scripts he didn't even make. Oh my God, that's how I got my environments broken because of the video he made that I watched. He had all the information out of order and somebody on my Discord had access to his scripts and we tried to reverse engineer them and we couldn't get it working. Anyways, moving on from that. In this video, we're going to talk about license considerations, your hardware requirements for running one of these trainings with FluxGym, installation and downloading models, how to prepare a training dataset, how to set up a training. Chapters will be available down there if you want to jump around. For testing the LoRa's I trained for this video, I used Forge as well as Comfy UI with Flux setup in both of them. I did a video about how to set up Flux in Forge as well as Comfy UI. You can check out that video up here by clicking the card and watching that after this video or before this video. I don't care what order you watch my videos in. And just a quick summary about FluxGym. It has easy configs in it for you to train with a 24, a 16, or even a 12 gigabyte GPU. And we've talked about 12 gigabyte GPUs on this channel in a few videos. And you can get decent results. Here's the GitHub repo. It says the front end of the web UI is forked from AI Toolkit, which is Gradio. And the back end is just basically the scripts from CUDA. GUI looks like this in bright blind my eyes mode, and it supports GPUs with these amounts of VRAMs. In my testing, if you had one of these lower VRAM amount GPUs, the trained LoRa's did have slightly less detail the further down you went. But if you had a project where you really needed a Flux LoRa, FluxGym is still the way to go because the results are still pretty good. I did a video about the RTX 3060 12 gig because it's a really, really inexpensive GPU for the amount of VRAM you get, and I did some Flux LoRa training testing on that GPU as well as the 3080 Ti, which also has 12 gigabytes of VRAM. You can check out that video by clicking the card up here or clicking the link in the descriptables below or whatever. Now let's briefly take a look at the license for Flux, because you need to be aware of a couple of things. This is the actual repo for Flux from Black Forest Labs. They're the ones that released it. Not Cocktail Peanut, which is the guy who made FluxGym. And they have their whole license here. You may only access, use, distribute, or create derivatives of or the Flux. What? So this is future me shortening this section of the video, blah, blah, blah. I threw the license for Flux into Grok, which is an AI chatbot like ChatGPT or Gemini, and I asked it about the license. When I first wrote the script for this video, you were not allowed to distribute the main model or any models you trained at all, including LoRa's or whatever. But now you can, but you can't sell them. And you have to include attribution with the distribution, which means stating that it was trained on Flux One Dev and where you got it. Also, with the old license that I read before, you were not allowed to sell your art that you generated, but you can now. I thought about it and I decided, since I can distribute the LoRa's I train, but I can't sell them, I'm gonna put them on civitai. So I will be putting a link to my civitai profile down in the descriptor box below. All right, let's talk about the hardware requirements for doing a Flux LoRa training with FluxGym. A GPU with at least 12 gigabytes of VRAM. I am super happy to see this. That's why I got smiley face emoji. When Flux training first came out, you needed at least 24. Now check this out. You're going to want at least 32 gigabytes of system RAM because it leverages that for some of the processing. You might be able to use less system RAM, but you're going to need a 24 gigabyte VRAM GPU. If you don't have that much, then keep watching. You might get some good trainings going and, you know, not have anything else running on your computer and just leave it running and leave it alone. You're going to need about 85 gigabytes of free storage on your system drive, whether it's an SSD or hard drive, just for installing FluxGym and the models. Note, you're going to need additional space for training LoRa. Also, it duplicates training data, so make sure you have plenty of room. Training in single LoRa with multiple outputs could take up anywhere from 300 megabytes to over 1 gigabyte, depending on how you configure the outputs. All right, let's just take a quick look at how much VRAM and system RAM use that FluxGym had during my testing. What I did was I used Hardware Info 64 to look at the GPU's maximum VRAM after the training was done. Here's the maximum column, and you'll see it right here. So for example, this particular test, it used 17.8 gigabytes of VRAM. And for system RAM, I looked at Task Manager Details tab at all of the Python processes and added up this memory over here. All right, so check it out. RTX 3090, that's my only GPU that I have with 24 gigabytes of VRAM that I can really use. It used 17.8 gigabytes of VRAM plus 12.5 gigabytes of system RAM. And this is on the 20 gigabyte training. So in total, it used about 30. And then I used the Dev 2 Pro model with the 16 gigabytes. It's a different model. And it used 17.8 again, even though I set the training size to 16 gigabytes over here. And it used less system RAM at 12. Now, using the Flux Dev model, which is the base one you can get from Black Forest Labs with the 16 gigabyte training, as you could see, it was very similar, slightly more system RAM. And I ran these a couple times and it was about the same. So RTX 3090 on the 12 gigabyte training, and I'm just using Flux Dev on there, was 13.4 gigabytes VRAM plus 20 system RAM. So this is why I'm saying you're going to want to have at least 32 gigabytes of system RAM. So you have room for having other stuff open like your documents or this video or other resources. Now here's 12 gigabyte GPU, the RTX 3080 Ti. On the 12 gigabyte training, it only used 11.4 gigabytes of VRAM plus 15.14 system RAM, totaling around 26.54. So again, I made sure that machine had enough system RAM. All right, now let's talk about the prerequisites for installing FluxGym on your computer. Flux uses Koya scripts, and Koya scripts use CUDA to do the training. So you're going to need the CUDA toolkit. Here's 11.8, which I know it works on this version for sure. And on a couple of my computers, I have CUDA 12.4, I believe, and it works on that as well. If you already have CUDA installed, you can try to run FluxGym. If you don't, I recommend you grab 11.8. I'll have a link to this page in the description. You hit Windows over there, and then that one, like, you don't have another choice. Like, why did you even have this button? Whatever. I have Windows 10, so if you have Windows 11, hit that. And then hit exe local. That way you download the whole thing, and it doesn't have to download again later. And just download that. I can show you an example from CUDA 12.1 because the screens are the same. When you run it, it wants to extract first, and so this takes a couple minutes. When you get to the screen, just hit agree and continue, and then change this to custom. You don't need all the extra stuff that's in here. Hit next. Uncheck these bottom three. Expand the first one, and you only need the runtime. Unless you're going to be doing this other stuff and you know what this stuff is. You just need the runtime, and you don't have to do anything else. Just next, finish it. You will need to install Git as well as Python 3.10.11. I went over how to do this and how to set it up in my Essentials for AI Part 1 video. Card right there. Link in description, thingy, drop down, expand a box below. Now, it's really important after you got all these prerequisites installed, save any files you're working on left open, close all your programs, all of them, and restart the computer. All right, let's talk about installing FluxGym. You can run this if you want. This is the repo for FluxGym, and they have a one-click install right here, but it's not really a one-click install. It's Pinocchio, which I I can't stand this program. This is my look of disapproval. Because it hides what it installs and where the folders for things go, and it's really hard to manage it. So it's up to you if you want to fight that battle. Another option is in my tier 2 folder on my Patreon I mentioned earlier, and you just run install fluxgym.bat. Put this file in a folder and run it, and it will create the FluxGym folder for you and do all of the installation steps. So for example, I have D AI stuff, Stable Diffusion. That's a folder where I keep all my Stable Diffusion stuff. You just want to drop the install FluxGym batch file in there, right click it, hit properties. If there's a block message here, check the box that says unblock and then hit OK, and then just run it. But I'm also going to show you how to do all of the steps in it one at a time. This is for folks not using the batch file. Go to the FluxGym repo that I'll have linked in the description below. Hit the little down arrow by the green code button, and then this copy button, and then have a command line open to the same folder that you want to install it in. In Windows 11, you could type CMD up here and hit enter. If you're like me and you refuse Windows 11 because it makes you throw up in your mouth, you might not want to type CMD up here because it breaks the history of hitting back and what. I'm not getting into that. But anyways, you just type git clone and then right click to paste the URL of the repo. And since I already have FluxGym right here, I'm going to change the name of the folder that it makes by just typing what I want. FluxGym, I'm put an underscore demo because I'm making a demo for this video, and hit enter. Now we're going to change directories, which is CD, and go into the FluxGym folder that we just made, and I'm hitting tab for autocomplete. That's all that was. Press enter. And now I'm going to copy paste the command to clone the scripts for Koya. That's what I just did. Looking at the repo for FluxGym, you could just copy paste these 3 lines to do what I just did in the last 3. But I changed a couple of things later to make it easier on you in the future. So press enter for cloning a Koya, and it goes right by like that. Real quick, another way to open CMD and go to the correct folder. Hit Windows button R on your keyboard, opens that box. Type in CMD into the run box, hit enter. And you get this, and type cd space /d, and then the folder you want to go to, in my case, it's d:// AI stuff / Stable Diffusion. Okay, now what I'm about to demonstrate, I should have been doing it in this folder, FluxGym demo, because it's a folder I made for this demo. So ignore the fact that I'm not in the right folder, but I'm going to show you the 3 different ways that you can create a Python environment depending on how you have Python installed. I'm sorry in the recording that I wasn't in the right folder. You just have to make sure that you are in your FluxGym folder when you do these steps. So you need to see what version of Python happens just by typing Python. So Python 3.10.11, so I can just type Python if I want. So in this case, on this computer, I confirmed I can get to Python just by typing Python, but I have to hit Control-Z first to get out of that. Sometimes you have to press Control-Z and then press enter. But if that was showing 3.10.11, you can create the environment this way. Just type Python -m and then a space, venv, and then another space, venv, and hit enter. And this takes a minute, but it's actually creating a folder with a whole bunch of stuff in there. So this next method may tell you what versions of Python you have installed. You type 2 words, where, and a space, and then Python. Okay? In this case, we found Python 3.10, so I can demonstrate this. I would copy this, type a double quote character, and then paste in that path, another double quote character. You need double quotes around any path that has a space in it, so I just do it by habit. Space, -m, space, venv, venv. And that would create the environment. All right, this next method is if you have the Python launcher installed. You could type py space -0 to see what versions the Python launcher is aware of. In this case, if I just use the Python launcher itself, it would use Python 3.12. We don't want that. We want the 3.10. So I can verify it would work by typing this command, py space -3.10. Notice I'm not putting the .11 at the end. And then a space --version and hit enter. And it did find it. So, for example, if I put 3.9, it wouldn't find it because 3.9 is not installed. So how do we use that to install the environment? py space 3.10 space. Notice there's no .11 there at the end. -m space venv space venv. And that would create a Python 3.10.11 environment for you. For those running the batch file off of my Patreon folder on Google Drive, you don't have to worry about any of this stuff because this script figures it out for you. Now we need to activate the environment, so we're going to type call and then a space, double quote, venv / scripts / activate.bat, and another double quote, and press enter. And when you see it with venv over here, that means the virtual environment is activated, and you do not want to install the rest of the stuff until after you've been able to achieve this. All right, we need to install the libraries that are required for CUDA scripts. So first we want to change directories, cd into sd, and just press tab so it auto completes. So now we're in CUDA's SD scripts folder, and type pip space install space -r requirements.txt, because this txt file is already there with all of the things that it needs written inside of it, and pip is going to read it and install all of those things. And this takes a few minutes, so go do something else instead of staring at this all day.
What is it? Why are you staring at me like that?
I wasn't staring, Jeffrey.
All right, when it finishes, it'll look like this. Well, you might not have this line. It's just telling you that there's a new version of pip available, but I'm going to move on. You need to go up one folder, which means we need to be in this folder, and you type this command, cd ... and press enter. And just press the up arrow on your keyboard a couple of times so that it puts what you put before, which is pip space install space -r space requirements.txt. Because there's another requirements.txt, because we need to install the libraries that FluxGym itself uses. And just hit enter. And this is another thing that's going to take a little while, so walk away and come back and check on it.
I walk away.
I walk away. I walk away.
Now for this next part, we need to install PyTorch, but it changes depending on what version GPU you have. So go here on the repo for FluxGym and keep scrolling down to the end of the install section to where you see it says start, and then scroll up above start a little bit. If you have one of the new NVIDIA RTX 5000 series GPUs, you need to do these two lines. And if you don't, do this line by itself. Just hit the copy button there. And I'm going over to my other computer that I'm remoted into, and I'm going to right click the paste and hit that. You may get this error, ignore it. It doesn't mean that there was actual problem installing it. But now we need to make a batch file for running it, because the repo doesn't come with a batch file for running it. It just tells you to type a command to run it. Like I'm gonna activate the environment manually and type this command every single freaking time. This is my look of disapproval. I thought FluxGym was supposed to be easier than CUDA. CUDA has a batch file to start it up, and it activates the environment first and everything. You can go into the folder, so in this case I made this folder, and you can right click and hit new, and then do whatever stuff to make a new text file and rename it and all that stuff. What I like to do, I just cleared the screen so we don't have all that other garbage, is type a right angle bracket, which is the same as a greater than, and then a space, and then start.bat, and then a space, and then echo in all caps, and a left square bracket. Trust me, this is all, you know, all this stuff. And it, when you press enter, you don't see anything because it made that file. And I type notepad, and then type start.bat, and now we can type all the stuff we want, and I'm pasting it in. You could pause the video and type all that in. I'll also have the contents of the start.bat file in the description for you to copy paste, but consider supporting me with a few dollary dues, because I'll be selling this on my Patreon, obviously, with all the other scripts I made for FluxGym. It'll be right here. It says start.bat. Just take all of these files, so you don't need this combined training folders one we'll talk about later, or the install FluxGym one, and just put all these batch files in that folder. You'll have to right click and hit download, and then it zips them all together into one zip file. What's it? And I have my browser set to ask me where to download stuff. You can always just open up your downloads folder and move it. So here I've got the batch file in my FluxGym installation. I can just right click it and hit E for extract here or click extract here. I already have start.bat in there, so I'm going to hit no. So the reason why we want start.bat like this, title FluxGym, what's that do? That puts FluxGym in the title up there, and if you have your taskbar set up the way I do, it'll say FluxGym down here as well, so you can find it. Now this one is in case you already have an environment running that you need to kill before you actually start. That's what that line does. This is important because if FluxGym has errors and you break out of it so it stops running, you know, by typing Control-C, you want to clear the Python environment out of memory before you start it again. This is not unique to FluxGym. It's like all the Python AI tools are like this. And this line is to start the environment. So watch what happens. We'll just paste each line so you can see, okay, nothing happened because it wasn't running yet. And then we're going to activate the environment. Now we can do the Python app.py, but I'm just going to hit start.bat so you can see how that works. It may look like it's not doing anything for a few minutes, and then it shows this like briefly for a half of a millisecond and scrolls a bajillion lines down and shows this. And then you know the drill with other AI stuff. You got to copy paste the URL into the browser like that, and then you have access to it. Now I'm going to talk about a really difficult step that at least I had with FluxGym, which is downloading the models. Here's what the GUI looks like. And you choose the model from right here, except that it's not downloaded yet. And you not only need this base model for training, but you also need clips and the VE. And I watched this command line, go, and it would get stuck and never finish the downloading. Look at this screenshot I've got here where it says it's like at 100% downloading, but it never actually proceeds to the next step. On other times, it would be stuck at 20 or 40 or 60 or random numbers. And if it happened to me, then it could happen to you. Well, I realized it could happen to anybody. The theories I had about it was like either something to do with my internet or maybe the Hugging Face server was timing out my downloads. But then later on, I reverse engineered how FluxGym was downloading the models using Hugging Face Hub, and I researched how to do the syntax for the Hugging Face Hub command line scripts, whatevers, and they downloaded fine when I did it that way. But anyways, this GUI doesn't have a way for you to download the models ahead of time. No, you fill out this whole thing to do a training, and then it will just get stuck downloading something. I did these tests on 3 different computers, and I had this problem. You can try to allow it to download the models on its own, but there's no documentation until now, with the creation of this video, what models it's actually using or where they're coming from. And you can't just download the models straight from Black Forest Labs and use them because Cocktail Peanut or whatever his name is modified them. And I was able to do it 2 different ways. I was able to go to the Hugging Face repos and download them and put them in the folders where they're supposed to go. And I was also able to use the same scripts, that snippets out of the script, anyways, to use a Hugging Face command line downloader to download the models. So there's a couple of options for you here. First is to try to let it download the models for you on its own after you've set up a training, and then if it fails, you have to set up the training again. Second option is to go to Hugging Face to get all the separate models and download them and put them in the folders. I'm going to show you what folders they are in a minute. Third option is to use this download models batch file. Have this inside of your FluxGym folder. Run it. You just run it like this, download _models.bat. Press enter and you get this. I recommend doing option A unless you never plan on downloading the dev model or the Schnell. The Schnell is trash. You don't need that, but you can download them individually. But let's get on with the video. Flux 1 Dev, which is the main model from Black Forest Labs. Training with this will get you some pretty good results with training, but here's the funky thing. Clicking on this is where FluxGym is downloading the model from. It's a Cocktail Peanut repo on Hugging Face. If I go to model card, all he did was literally copy the Hugging Face repo from Black Forest Labs. It looks exactly the same. Instead of putting attribution here like the license tells him to do. Now look at this. Look, I'm on the Black Forest Labs flux1.dev Hugging Face repo. Control tab, I'm over on Cocktail Peanuts. It's a literal one-to-one copy-paste.
That's really disturbing, right?
And what's really, really, really more frustrating is if you go to files and versions on the Black Forest Labs version, I can download this, but I made a screenshot before I signed the license on here. It says it's a gated model. You can list files but not access them. So, awkward.
It's a little awkward.
You want to look for this file right here, flux1-dev.sft. And I'm going to show you on this computer to make it easier for me filming this video. Stable Diffusion, FluxGym. So I'm in my FluxGym folder now, and then you go to Models, and then Unet, and you put it right in that folder. All right, Flux1 Schnell. It's optional, it's kind of crappy. Use it if you want to experiment, but it's shit, and I don't know why it exists. Like, why did Black Forest Labs even make this garbage? You could download this garbage, I guess, if you want to experiment. I'm not your mom. But the next time I see her, I'll tell her you're filling up your planet with trash.
Yeah, garbage. Okay, give me garbage.
Like, this is the best I could do when I was testing. This is back when I was using the fork of Koya. The copy of Flux1 Schnell.safe tensors you need is on this other repo from Olafkuku, I guess. Just download this file. And it also goes in your Unet folder. Now this next one, I've like got a love-hate relationship with it. I love it because it makes your training come out better, but I hate it because, again, he's modified something from Black Forest Labs without fully reading the license. I assume. Here's the link. It's on a whole other fourth repo, Buddhist Kring Long Seriously, are you guys doing this so that you can troll lawyers and judges when you're dragged into court for, not using the Flux model correctly? Imagine a judge calling a case of Black Forest Labs versus Buddhist Squirrels / Queen Long Shagzigri. And go over to files and versions, and you want Flux1 Dev2 Pro.safe tensors. So in your Unet folder, make a folder that is spelled Bravo, Delta, Sierra, Queen, Larry, Sam, Zebra. So that's BDSQLSZ. Open that up. Then you have to make a folder that's Flux1-Dev2 Pro-Single. Open that up, and then you could drop the file in there.
That's weird.
So if you have my download models batch file, run that. You can do download all, but if you want to skip Schnell or if you want to skip the dev, you need to do the Clips one, the VE one, and then the Dev2 Pro single. I'm going to do download all so I can demonstrate something here. Installing Hugging Face Hub, which is the command line thing for Hugging Face. And it's just going boop, 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 because they're already downloaded. That's what's really cool if the Hugging Face Hub script is used correctly, is that if you have a model halfway downloaded and your computer crashes or you close the batch file or something and run it again, it will pick up where it left off and continue. And then the next time you run it, if the files are already downloaded, it will just automatically skip it.
Magic. Magic?
All right, now I'm going to tell you about the clips and where they go. Here's a comfy mom and comfy. You can read the screen. And go to files and versions. You need this clip L.safe tensors right here, and this T5XXL FP16.safe tensors. So I'm in my FluxGym and then my models folder, and then you want to go into clip, and this is where they go. 2 files. And note, I'm pretty sure that these text encoders are not unique to Flux. They're just used for certain types of image generator thingies. The text encoder is what interprets your prompts. I think they separated them for people that want to try different ones, but moving on. The VE, which is, I did a whole video on it. I can only do 5 cards per video, so I had to cut one in this case. So if you want to see my video on what VEs are and how to use them, look in the descriptive box, what's it below. For this one, we're going back to the Cocktail Peanut page, and you want ae.sft. And I'm in my FluxGym and then models folder, and you have a folder here that says VAE, and then you drop that in there. All right, now I'm going to show you some examples of LoRa's I've trained and then images I've generated to give you a better idea before we go into using the GUI so you know what's actually going on. When you train the LoRa's, you can have them output like every epoch or every 4 epochs or whatever. I'm zooming in so you can see what I'm talking about. And this is an amber Midthunder one. And see, here's the first epoch. And then moving to the right, it's 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's a point where it doesn't look like amber Midthunder anymore, and the body shape, if you look right here on the Bombajaloos, they're too big. So I'd have to go back and find where it looked good. So for this one, it like 2 doesn't look like her really at all. 3 starting to look like her, and I would have grabbed 4. And how that works is that after you train them and you have a bunch of LoRa files, you have to cut and paste them. So this is one of the things I don't like about FluxGym is that it hides the outputs and doesn't tell you where they are and you have to go find them. But then I've moved them inside of a folder that my Forge can see for its LoRa models. And then this is Forge. This particular one I liked the 5th epoch of the LoRa, but I would have had this at number 1 to test and then scroll down and change the script to XYZ plot, the X type to prompt SR. And then put all of this stuff in here. It's not a bunch of code. Don't freak out. People who have seen my LoRa training videos are used to this kind of thing for testing their trainings. What it is I'm taking this one here and opening up Notepad, pasting it, pressing enter. So I've got just the 1 there. And then looking at this, and I've got 1 through 14. And just doing this a bunch. So eventually I've got that, and then put a comma at the end of each one, like so, and then do this, and then copy pasting that over here. And then when it comes out, you get an image like this so that you can zoom in and decide which epoch was the best one for you to keep. I have done a few videos about training and testing trained LoRa's. You can learn more about this type of testing in my most recent video on this subject, LoRa Training, 2 Methods for Training a Face in Koya with Lion 8-bit and Adam W 8-bit. I have another video, like an updated addition to that stuff video coming out in the future, so make sure you're subscribed and the notification bell and all those weird things YouTube makes you go through so you know when I upload a freaking video. But after watching this video card thingy up, what's up here, if you still want to watch more LoRa stuff and you're willing to do some time traveling, just go back and watch some of my older videos. Now here's a bunch I did of Mille Gibson, and these were trained with Dev 1, not the Dev 2 Pro. Weird name in my opinion. It makes it sound like it's version 2 from Black Forest Labs. Stop posing. Anyways, I tried a whole bunch of different styles, and the skin's always this little bit of shininess, which is one of the things I don't like about Flux. But Dev 2 Pro does address that a little bit. It's doing really great with hands on all of these. And the details in the face, it's actually learned. Like Mille Gibson has a scar right here. The shape of her nose and her cheeks and everything is right. But it's like so shiny. Like, ugh. It's like her skin is plastic. Now I've got the XYZ test of doing a 20 gig training and a 16 gig training and a 12 gig training. So you can see something here. Here's the 20 gig. And as you could see, we're getting pretty good at Epoch 4. And 16 gig is getting really good at around Epoch 8. And a 12 gig training is not quite there at the Epoch 8 step. So going further, looking really good at 10. And 11 and 12 is getting away from her likeness a little bit. Again, here's the 20 gig training, and then here's the 16 gig, and then here's the 12 gig. And they all look like her. Okay, so you can get really good likeness doing the 12 gig training, which is my point. It just takes more epochs to get there. So remember that for when I show you how to set it up. Now I'm going to be showing you a few examples of training with just the Dev 1 Pro that Black Forest Labs made versus the Dev 2 Pro. I actually prefer the Dev 2 Pro because it makes the skin tones a little bit more accurate. Here's some examples. This is training with Dev 1, and then there's the Dev 2 Pro. Skin does look better there. And here's another comparison. You look, even though it's like causing it to generate a completely different image as if it's a different seed, the skin tone is better on the Dev 2 over here versus the Dev 1 over there. I just wish he would have called it something different. It looks really good. So I tried this angel style, because the lighting is completely different in it. And this is the Dev 1 Pro. And look at that. This one is so much better. Now sometimes the Dev 2 Pro, when you generate an image that was trained with that, doesn't get rid of all the shininess or plasticiness in the skin. Like, see here? It's only slightly better. And I think that's just an inherent problem with Flux, and I wish they would either upgrade Flux or go back to SDXL and give it some of the features of Flux. But I digress. Now, Boyos in the Discord was telling me about this model and how it gets your skin tones even more accurate, and which is like the second step I would consider using for generating Flux images. First being train with Flux 2 Pro. Second, use a better checkpoint than the base model for generating images with your trained LoRa. Because with SD 1.5 and SDXL, you're not supposed to use the base model for generating the images that you are making from the LoRas you trained with the base model. However, in a moment, I'm going to show you why that's probably not the case with Flux, at least not with this model. And it's called UltraReal Fine Tune. Still a pretty great model if you want to use it for other stuff. All right, if you want to test this, I'll show you how to download it because this is on civitai, linked in the description. Obviously, don't hit this 22 gig download right here. Scroll down. This might be collapsed like this where it says 4 files. You want to expand that. Look for where it says full model FP8, 11.8 gigabytes. And download that and use this to generate your images. But here's a problem. The left one was an image generated from a trained LoRa using Dev 1, and the one on the right is an image generated from training a LoRa using the Dev 2, but they're both in this UltraReal model. And it don't look like Amber Midthunder at all. Same deal here. It looks like a woman, and it's following my prompt. Does not look like Amber Midthunder. So it's like it's ignoring the LoRa. There's the angel one. Oh, terrible face. It needs a LoRa. Like the skin tone, not really, you know, see, the Dev 2 Pro does so much better. Like it's adding something to make it look better. But it's still not like Amber Midthunder. And just, ugh. No. Like, look at the mouth and the teeth and everything. Like the bumpy skin. Like it's so weird. The Dev 2 Pro makes it better, but the UltraReal Fine Tune checkpoint for generating, I think, is overtrained and won't allow you to mix in a LoRa with it. All right, let's look at the third option you have for making the skin tones look better. You know, during your testing of doing Flux stuff. It's a LoRa, actually, called Sony Mavica MVC FDC, which is a type of camera. But anyways, no special requirements for downloading it. And it does have a trigger word right here, but in my testing, I didn't even need to use a trigger word. All I had to do was reference the LoRa, but I was using Forge. You may have to use this trigger word in Comfy UI like Boyos in the Discord was. So instead of using the slider, I'm just going to go through these pictures and show you how well they did before and after. So this is the Dev 1, and then Dev 2, and then Dev 1 with the Mavica LoRa, Dev 2 with the Mavica LoRa. Gorgeous skin tones here. And this is one where I was doing XYZ plot testing, and using Mavica at number 1 for the weight was too much and it was messing up the skin. And turning it down all the way down to 0.2 was where I liked it, but I ended up with 0.3. Just so you know, when I do testing, I don't test every iteration. I skip. That's why there's a 4 and a 2, and then I went back to my 0.3 because the trained LoRa I did of Amber Midthunder or any other face, I always start at 0.7, and 0.7 plus 0.3 is 1. Most of the time, you want your LoRas that affect the same thing, like this face or whatever. You want it to add up to 1, which is 100%. All right, here's Dev 1, Dev 2, Dev 1 plus the Mavica LoRa, Dev 2 plus the Mavica LoRa. Skin is still looking a tiny bit plasticky, but it's getting much, much closer to what we want it to look like. Here's the angel prompt, Dev 1, Dev 2, Dev 1 with Mavica, and Dev 2 with Mavica. And then whatever the frick this prompt is and how it randomly puts glitter on their face for some of them, I don't know why. Dev 1, Dev 2, and then Dev 1 plus Mavica. Looking more plasticky in my opinion. Dev 2 plus Mavica. So in the prompt, it didn't help it. So I'm thinking the Mavica has lighting stuff in it, like a Vey does. And the lighting in this prompt made the Mavica bring out the plasticiness even more. So definitely your mileage will vary. And just real quick, I'm going to show you a little bit about how I have these prompts set up for my testing. Ignore all this at the top because I'm working on something else for my patrons right now. But normally I would have this set to Flux and there would be a Flux checkpoint in there. It's like I recommend just using the regular Flux 1 Pro to generate all your stuff if you're using a LoRa. And here's the reference to the Amber Midthunder LoRa. And if I go down to LoRa down here and type Mavica, M-A-V-I-C-A, here it is, click that, it puts it in the prompt for me. And then I didn't really need this. You could try it with and without, but when I put this, it was like I was referencing it twice and it gave it too much. So let's take that off and change this 1 to a 0.3 and you can see what I mean, how 0.7 plus 0.3 equals 1. Start there and let me know how you get on with your images that you've generated from your trained LoRa's. Okay, now let's talk about preparing the training data set. Here's a couple of examples for Amber Midthunder. I used to do training with just a single folder, but then part of figuring out how to get better body shapes, I would end up with 3 folders. And on the way there, I had a while where it was 2 folders like this, where this folder is just her face, and this other folder is all the other images. And I duplicated some of them where it would doubles, so it would learn the body shape better. But FluxGym doesn't like you to use multiple folders. So there's a couple things you can do about this. This temp folder was me making a training folder with those 2 sets of images combined. And I later on made a script. Let's go to Casey Rolls folder, which is a LoRa I recently released on my Patreon. I'm going here. And here's one of the scripts that I'm going to have in my FluxGym folder on Patreon for you. I can double click this and this thing pops up and move it to the side. Then I can copy paste this folder path over to here like that and hit enter. And it processes all of them in there. And it moves all the images and the caption files into the same folder and renames them, and just in case you might end up having duplicates to make that step easier. Obviously, you can do this on your own. You just have to move all your images and text files into one folder, and you can use previously created CUDA training datasets for this. But this is tricky if you have files with the same names in different folders, which is why I created this script. Or you can just put all your images in one folder and have FluxGym caption the files for you with a different method that, according to some people, Flux likes better. However, I tested both with the WD-14 captioning method inside of CUDA, as well as using the captioning method inside of FluxGym, and I prefer WD-14 because FluxGym is clunky. Check this out over here. I did months and months and months of testing and developing a method for getting better body shapes. I mean, like hips and chest and face, and all of the proportions are correct in a LoRa training. And there will be a card up here for you to click. I highly recommend you watch it, because even taking the data sets that I've made using this method and then combining all the images and caption files into one folder seems to work really good for FluxGym training. So option 1 is converting from a regular CUDA data set. We've talked about that. Option 2 is using a data set from a previous FluxGym training. Now this is just kind of weird. D, AI stuff, stable diffusion, FluxGym. I'm just going to where my FluxGym is. Now, you see this folder datasets? Later on when I show you in the GUI, what happens when you actually drop images into it, it copies them and makes a whole other folder. So this is an option too. And this is a good way to keep things sorted, is that you can just go in here, make sure it's the one you want by changing it to large icons view, scroll around. Okay, that's the one I want. Going back and maybe pasting this folder somewhere else and renaming it, that's an option. So check out this folder. This is where I have FluxGym installed, and then after you import images into it and start doing a training, it makes these subfolders. It copies all your files over there and has the .txt files in there and the .npz temporary files. And this is a folder that I've copied from one of those over there. And see, I named it. I keep all my stuff together and organized. This is my Amber Midthunder stuff. So I have one in there if I ever need it again. And if I open that up, it's got only text files and .png files. So if you do that, copy your PNGs and your text files over, but do not copy the .mpz files. That's the easiest way is hit Control F so you're in this box right there and hit star.mpz. So it's only showing the MPZ files. Click one at random, doesn't matter which one. Hit Control A, which is select all, and then Shift Delete, which permanently deletes them, and they bypass the recycle bin and just are forever gone, and hit yes. Why this is okay, as long as you're not running a training that's using that folder, it's because if you run a training off that same folder again, it's just going to recreate the .mpz files again. And also, you should periodically come in and wipe all these out because it just duplicates these if you have a different name for the training. And option 3 is just start from scratch and create a whole new data set. And just make sure you have all the images in the same folder. And hopefully after you set up your training data set, you have your original pics in a separate folder. Like Burmy is where I always keep my training data sets for SD 1.5 and SDXL training. And then I have the original pics that I downloaded in a whole other folder just in case I need them again. Now the captioning, I talked about that. Optional is to use Koya SS GUI for the captioning. If you don't know about that, you can watch one of my LoRa training videos. I also talk about this in the Better Body Shapes video. But once you have Koya installed, it's in the Utilities tab, and then Captioning, and then WD-14. And there's some other steps you have to do in there. And then you can also caption with FluxGym. I'll show you that in a minute. So this document will be in my Patreon if you just want to read through it and get more details. But now we're moving on, and I'm going to show you how to use the FluxGym GUI. We have it like this, and let's say I've got this combined image folder. So this already has captions in here. So if I just drop this folder in here, it has an error. It's very frustrating. You have to go in the folder and don't have any of the .mpz files that another training drops in there. Those are temporary files. You have to delete those. Hit Control A so you get them all, and then drop all of that in there. Then it uploads them, where it's not really uploading, it's just copying it to another folder. And while that runs, I have the GUI loaded up, and I'm going to do a KC roll training. And I'm going to use this combined folder that I made earlier and make sure this folder only has PNG and text files, nothing else. Like if there's temporary files from a Koya training, you have to delete those. Those look like .npz, but I'm going to right click this and hit rename so I can copy paste the instance prompt out of here and put that over here. Because I recommend you name your LoRa's after the instance prompt so that it reminds you how to trigger it. And you can make it unique and put like 12 gigabyte to say if you're going to do a 12 gigabyte training. And you also want to put your instance prompt in there. And then a comma, space, woman, and then a comma and no space. So let's say you wanted to use the Dev2 Pro single model. You'd have to use the drop down and choose it there. And then if I'm doing like a 12 gig training, I can click that. And you can leave the repeat trains and the max epochs at default. And this one as well. And if you want samples, you can put a whole prompt in here, and samples will appear way down here in this box while the training's running, which you don't really need because you're just going to output every epoch. Now, this resized dataset images thing, I did not mess with this because I've only got so much bandwidth in my brain to make this video. So what I would do, see how it says 768 by 768 down here? I would go down here and put 768, okay? And to remind myself that this is a 768 LoRa, put another underscore and put 768 here. That way, when I'm generating images, I don't try to generate 1024 size images and maybe it not work. You can always test it and see if it works. I didn't. All the testing I did for this video was all on 1024 because that's what FluxGym can train up to. I guess resize means it's going to resize the images later and make them smaller if they're not that size. But anyways, now we need to put the data set in. Go in there, make sure there's only images in here and caption files. It's if you've done the captioning ahead of time. And I'm going to show you something. Now, I've made a folder earlier in the video where I combined all the text files and PNGs into one folder. And I've also made this one where it's just the PNG files. And what you would do is hit Control A to select them all and then drag those all into this box. So drop the images in. And this is the method, like if you want to do the captions from within a FluxGym, you see is how it's got the instance prompt and the class prompt for woman. And then you just click where it says add AI captions with Florence 2, and it will do this processing thing. I do not prefer this method, and I'll show you why in a second when this is done. So far, so good. It looks good, but it's getting closer to the natural language prompting, which I don't understand why some people use just describe what's in the image. And in some cases, on some that I've done, it will think this person looks like another person. So if you're using this captioning method, you literally have to go through and read all of these and make sure that it didn't write something you don't want. Now I'm going to show you an example where Florence captioning went all wrong with my Amber Midthunder dataset, because this might happen to you and you have to double check the captions that it makes. So I've got FluxGym running over here. I've got a name of my LoRA set up, and I got to put in the trigger words, which is instance prompt and class prompt. Make sure everything else is set up. Okay, I'm good. Go over to this folder where I have all the images and .txt files. Hit Control F. Do a search for star.png. Control A. Drag them in. And because I have this in the trigger word part, when I scroll all the way down here and hit the add captions with Florence 2, it already has these at the beginning of each one. So let's go ahead and do that. And you have to wait a few minutes for it to load up Florence and do the captions. And they pop in kind of like that. Now, you don't want to try to fix these while it's still doing these. You have to wait, otherwise the page bugs out. And this is what I'm talking about right here. Vanessa Hudgens. I have to delete that. But don't just delete it. Oh, see, it put it back in because it's not done. So what do? Gotta go all the way down the end and wait for them to finish. So hit Control F so you get the search box of your browser and put in whatever the wrong thing was. Vanessa Hudgens. And you can't just use find and replace like the tools we have available for doing WDI14 captionings. The text on the board reads blah, blah, blah. I don't need any of that. It says, why doesn't it? It says EXP! The text on the board reads whatever. I don't need it to know this. Shut up! Vanessa Hudgens at the Critics Awards. What? The banner does not read anything. So in this case, I have to put a woman in a black dress standing on a red carpet with a banner in the background. And then just, that's fine. That's enough. But then sometimes it would get other people's names in here. So you have to read every single one of these and make sure it's not saying the wrong thing. Like, the banner is likely from the picture of Marvel Agenda's Age of Ultron. It is not. It is not Camellia Cabello. Stop! So now I'm going to show you what it's like when you're going to drop in previously tagged with WD14 set. Just drop them in. Same way. And in this case, I'm dropping in all the PNG and TXT files and nothing else. Scroll down, keep going past all that, and you'll see that whatever prompts you did before are going to be already there. And do not click this where it says add AI captions. And then keep going past all that. I'm just holding page down on my keyboard because I don't want to scroll for days. Expand where it says advanced options. And change save every n epochs to 1. It also has save every n steps, but I tried that and you don't need that many LoRa files. In the case of this type of training, doing this will generate enough LoRa's for you to do an XYZ test like I showed you about earlier to find the best one. So you need to see this so you're aware where FluxGym puts its stuff. Let's go ahead and go to my FluxGym folder that I have on another computer. Stable Diffusion, FluxGym. Here we go. Outputs and dataset. So when you put in your training images, they end up getting copied in there. But right now we're talking about outputs. Go in there. These are all my different trainings that it's made. And opening one up. Okay, I've already moved the LoRa's out of that one. And here's one that still has the LoRa's in that folder. So in my notes here, I pointed out that there's other Koya settings in the advanced section. So this is one of the things that I like about FluxGym is that the GUI is pretty simple and it has everything that's advanced in the advanced section instead of having it like all mixed up and everything. And anyways, like, let's see, regularization data dir, if you use regularization data, which you don't really for FluxGym, but if you wanted to try it, it's there. Network alpha is in there. Network dimension is right here, and it's set to 4 by default. You don't have to change it unless you want to. Do some experiments. Gradient accumulation steps, which I've talked about that on a previous video. And on and on and on, and you could tinker for days if you wanted. All right, let's go over this before we start training. Just real fast, what every step is. Have a good name in your LoRa that tells you in the future what the trigger word is, what kind of training it was, whatever information you want to put right there. Trigger word / sentences. This is really only used if you're using a Florence captioning. I put it in here as a habit, which is instance prompt, comma, space, class prompt, comma, no space. Change it to the Dev2 Pro single. 12 gigabytes for the training on this particular example. This machine has 12 gigabytes GPU. Default, default, default. If you want to write a prompt for the sample images, I don't because you're going to be testing in the future anyway. Resize dataset images. I have only tested 1025 and I only put 1025 by 1025 square images in. So I put that to 1025. Let's keep scrolling. I'm just going to hit page down a bajillion times. Expand advanced options. Make sure save every and epochs has been changed to 1. Hit control home or page up a bunch of times to get up here and hit start training. And eventually this F symbol up here, it's going to start spinning around. And that means it's training. And now it starts doing this, showing console stuff on the screen. And you can't scroll back up to check what you did for your training unless you click this to turn auto scroll off. And you can go back up. Turn it back on, it does that. Now there's an error with my training, or it may be an error on this particular computer, I'm not sure. But if you have an error, it will say command exited with code 1. I do have a screenshot of what happens when it does finish training so you could see it. It looks like this. It says command exited successfully. And you can't really see it, but you'll have these like progress bars that go by as it outputs a LoRa for every epoch. All right, now for some final thoughts while I wrap this video up. You can get some great results training LoRas in FluxGym if you're okay with the sus models and the flaky interface. But its GUI is still miles ahead of Koya's newer GUI. I like their older GUI better if you want to dig for it. I'm out of cards. I can't add any more cards up here. YouTube only lets me have 5. Look up Koya bits and bytes errors on my channel if you want to use the old Koya GUI for SD 1.5 and SDXL. It won't do Flux. Oh, and if you wanted to stop watching this video right now, I understand. But to help me out with the algorithm, keep letting it just run. Just let it run all the way through. Watch time is one of the things that YouTube likes. But anyways, all right, now for the outro section. And sometimes when I do these, I just have my artwork on the screen. So just listen to some of my soundtrack music I make for my videos and look at pictures of stuff I've generated with the LoRas that I've trained in FluxGym and just have an art moment. And I'll see you in the next video.